My regret is that it took me 80 years to understand that and sometimes, if life is generous, it gives you one final chance to
Some love stories don't end when the marriage does. Some don't even end when decades pass. This is the story of a woman who divorced her husband, lived 20 years without him, and then, at 80 years old, chose to marry the same man again.
When I divorced him 20 years ago, I believed I was doing what was necessary, not what was easy. I wasn't running away from chaos or pain. I wasn't reacting to betrayal. I was simply exhausted in a way that no one else could see. Our marriage hadn't exploded. It had faded, slowly, quietly. And because nothing dramatic had happened, I told myself that meant it was already over. We had been married for most of our adult lives. We built a home, raised children, shared responsibilities, survived illnesses, losses, financial stress, and the countless ordinary moments that make up a long life together. From the outside, people saw stability. Inside the marriage, I felt invisible. Conversations became shorter, silence became routine, and instead of asking what was happening between us, I convinced myself that this was just what love looked like when it was gone. There was no single argument that caused the divorce, no final breaking point. It was accumulation. Years of small disappointments that never felt important enough to address. Words I swallowed because I didn't want to start a fight. Needs I didn't articulate because I didn't want to sound ungrateful. Over time, I began to feel like I was living beside him instead of with him. I remember thinking that love shouldn't feel this quiet forever. And once that thought settles in your mind, it becomes very persuasive. It starts to rewrite the past. You begin to reinterpret everything through the lens of dissatisfaction. You stop noticing effort because it doesn't come in the form you expect. You stop recognizing presence because it doesn't feel exciting. When we decided to divorce, it felt strangely calm, almost procedural. Paperwork, conversations about logistics, no tears in front of each other. People around me told me I was brave. They said I had given enough years already. They told me it was never too late to start over, even at that age. And I believed them, because believing them made the decision feel lighter. Living alone felt peaceful at first. The house stayed the way I left it. No compromises, no quiet disappointments, no tension lingering in the air. I told myself this was freedom, and for a while it was, or at least it felt like relief. But relief doesn't last forever, and when it fades, it leaves space behind space where reflection begins. Time passed in ways I didn't notice at first. Years blended together. Friends aged. Some passed away. Our children built lives of their own. The world grew smaller, and something unexpected happened as the years went by. My memories changed. The things that once annoyed me didn't feel annoying anymore. His routines, his predictability, the way he would sit quietly in the evenings, saying nothing, just existing in the same space. Back then, I interpreted that silence as emotional distance, as lack of interest. Now I see it differently. Now I see it as presence without performance. I began to understand that I had confused boredom with safety, that I had mistaken stability for stagnation, that I expected love to constantly feel something instead of simply being something. And that realization was uncomfortable because it meant I had left something that wasn't broken, just neglected. We lived completely separate lives for many years. We aged independently. We became different versions of ourselves. But distance has a way of stripping emotion down to its truth. Without daily friction, Without resentment being constantly triggered, clarity has room to emerge. We didn't reconnect with romance, not at first. We reconnected with conversation, brief messages, occasional check-ins, nothing heavy, nothing loaded. And those conversations felt different from anything we had shared before. There was no need to defend ourselves, no desire to be right, no future to negotiate. When you reach this stage of life, something shifts. You stop performing, you stop pretending, you stop protecting your ego. You speak plainly because time suddenly feels expensive. You say what matters because there may not be another chance to say it. One afternoon during a quiet conversation, he said something that stayed with me longer than anything else. He didn't apologize. He didn't explain. He simply said, "I think we spent years being afraid of saying the wrong thing and ended up saying nothing at all." That sentence followed me for weeks because it was true. We hadn't failed because we didn't love each other. We failed because we stopped being curious. We assumed we already knew who the other person was, and assumptions quietly replaced effort. The turning point wasn't dramatic. There was no grand moment. It happened slowly, in ordinary conversations where neither of us was trying to win. We talked about misunderstandings, about things we wish we had said earlier, about how silence had felt safer than honesty, and how that safety slowly turned into distance. Something surprised me during those conversations. The anger I thought I still carried wasn't there. The resentment had faded. What remained was familiarity, respect, and a sense of recognition that felt deeper than attraction. At 80 years old, love looks different. You're not searching for excitement. You're searching for truth, for peace, for someone who knows your history without requiring explanation, someone who has seen your best and your worst, and stays anyway. When he asked me to marry him again, there were no fireworks, no elaborate proposal, just a simple question asked with complete clarity. And in that moment, I understood something I hadn't before. I wasn't marrying the man I divorced. I was marrying the man I finally understood. And I wasn't the same woman either. I had learned patience. I had learned humility. I had learned that love doesn't disappear, it gets neglected. We remarried not because we were lonely, but because we were honest, because we had stripped love down to what actually matters when everything else falls away. There were no illusions left, no expectations that the other person would change, just a quiet agreement to choose each other with open eyes. My regret isn't that I divorced him. My regret is that it took me 80 years to understand that love doesn't need to be loud to be real. And sometimes, if life is generous, it gives you one final chance to recognize what you once walked away from.
Some lessons don't arrive when they're most useful. They arrive when pride has faded, when urgency is gone, and when all that remains is honesty. This story isn't about telling anyone to stay or leave. It's about understanding that love changes shape over time, and what once felt like distance can sometimes turn out to be misunderstanding. For some people, divorce closes the door forever. For others, distance becomes the teacher that marriage never was. And in rare moments, life offers something unexpected. A second chance, not to relive the past, but to see it clearly. Love doesn't always come back louder. Sometimes it comes back quieter, wiser, and stripped of illusion. And when it does, it isn't because time healed everything. It's because understanding finally arrived.